for whatever reason, the internet doesn't really work to find actual help or retreat or refuge. It doesn't usually work for connection, conversations, relationship. It doesn't feel like civilization. And it's hard to find any place or anyone who makes you feel respected and understood. So I made KatherineLand to have a go at creating a structure that does support all of that stuff. I've had to contend with some problems. I know other people out there have some problems, even some huge problems. And I wanted a place that would support making progress on our huge problems. I wanted to bring together people who have huge problems, who may have been crushed or decided to attempt the overwhelming in a seemingly impossible context. I wanted people to gather who've become absolutely determined to do whatever it takes to find relief and to fundamentally change our math against all odds and perhaps without any local support. Together, we can back away from the edge, turn ourselves around, and go forward to achieve greatness, to live to fight another day, or at least to fail gracefully on our own terms with some kind of satisfaction. Perhaps you're going through something that nobody's ever been through, or you have a regular sized problem that just feels so big that it's like nobody's ever been through it. I wanted to create a place that supported us to retreat, connect, converse, relate, feel respected and understood, find relief, build momentum, and forgive ourselves for our part in our own suffering. And perhaps sometimes to even team up in real life to give each other practical help and support. Why would it work here if it doesn't work anywhere else? Because this is a clubhouse for elephants. What's an elephant? Well, if you've been on the internet or in the world, you can probably recognize other options. All of these options are perfectly adaptive. They're not better or worse than one another necessarily. It's just they work better or worse in different situations. Have you been someplace where everybody's crocodile? They're biting, killing, tar. Well, I don't think crocodiles are really like that. And so with great respect for Steve Irwin and team, it's a metaphor. And it's really based on the chakra system. But if you think about it, why is a crocodile set of behavior adaptive? Well, it would be good in extreme circumstances of privation. Sometimes they wait for a really long time for the option for something to come along and in miserable conditions and suffering a lot. And yet they wait ready to go, ready to take advantage of an opportunity when it finally comes. So it is important to have that way of being because sometimes we get into extreme circumstances and, we need to adapt to it. Another type of approach that you'll probably recognize is the RAM approach. And it's like a wonderful, beautiful approach in the sense that it starts to account for the well-being of more people. It's maybe a little immature because you're thinking, maybe, I'll have a birthday party and everybody will come. It'll be so fun. But it's still you having the birthday party, but you're still thinking that other people should have some fun. And that's great and great forward motion. One of the factors of being in a group of rams is the collision, the conflict. Bang! I disagree. I have a feeling of how things should go. No, whose feeling will win? Whose dream, whose vision will overcome and collect the other people under it? That's another way of being, and it's very adaptive for a world that has a little bit of abundance but very little structure because you're trying to think of a structure. However, over time, it gets difficult to attract people to your kingdom to participate in things the way that you had in mind. And people tend to get frustrated with that and think to themselves, rather than try and convince everybody to behave the way I had in mind with my beautiful vision, why don't I find a bunch of people who agree with me already and are already doing that thing? And I'll get with them and we'll all do it together. And that's an antelope approach. And a herd is very adaptive. On the savannah, when you have the occasional predator that comes along, it's not very kind, because it's the old, the weak, and the infirm that are sacrificed to the predator so that the herd can be strong. And, maybe people feel a little odd about that. It's definitely not a no man left behind organization. And it has a special technique and a special behavior that it's able to do. It's flocking, you might call it, which has 3 rules. And you could recognize these in groups of people where these are the overarching rules. Number 1, if you want to flock effectively, you don't smash into each other. Don't have collisions and maybe conflicts. Number 2, head in the same direction as everybody else. Be going the same basic way. And number 3, head toward the middle. And if you program those into particles in a computer, the particles will flock. So those are the 3 rules that create flocking. And they're great. It's a wonderfully adaptive strategy if you're in a big wild world. Excuse me, in a wild world. And by wild, I mean something very specific. I'm using Gary Snyder's definition. He's a deep ecologist. All age, unmanaged, with a focus on unmanaged. So one of the reasons why cattle are great farm animals is because of their herding instincts and their other instincts, which farmers can manage to farm the cows. Now, the cattle aren't thinking, the farmer's the boss of me. They don't think that. They think they're in charge of themselves. They think they're sovereign all day long, making all the decisions that they had in mind. And, what are you talking about? They think, oh, well, look at the grass. It's so much nicer over there. Now that the gate is open, I'm going to go. Especially because some weirdo back here behind me is going rah, rah, and slapping a flag around. That's disturbing. It looks much more peaceful and delicious over there. I'm going to go. Well, really, but the farmer, has just created the circumstances for you to go. So these behaviors, these different strategies are adaptive in certain behaviors, but they can in certain situations, but they can backfire in other situations. And when a farmer's on the scene, being an antelope is not necessarily as strategic as being elephant-like. So what's an elephant? So an elephants are people who attempt greatness despite all odds, and considering that sometimes merely surviving the day is a form of greatness, and they enthuse about weighty matters. We've built up a sense that we can create ourselves, transcend any lingering herd mentality in order to change anything and everything we want about ourselves and our world. So if you take an elephant approach, that would be, what's the best thing? Caring about communication, usually the quality of our own communication. We take a lot of things in stride, we have thick skin, but we can be passionate about what matters. Even though they say we live in a herd, we really live in a tribe or a family, and we're impossible to farm. So elephants resist manipulation effectively. And being a contrarian, going your own approach, taking an initiation in your own direction, if you're in a herd, can be deadly. But in a family or a tribe, it can save the day, especially if the instincts of the herds are a bad match for the current situation. On a team of enfranchised members that has a shared goal, everyone is happy about differences. Having the widest variety of information, skills, and resources is correlated with success. Everyone trying to highlight sameness and commonality and to hide or suppress variety is not correlated with success among elephants, although it works well for antelopes. So in KatherineLand, I have this culture guide that I've been basically riffing on today, where it's a suggestion of a way to be together. And then there's me, who can hold that vision and who can eventually reluctantly weigh in, and if there's too much of a disturbance to the elephant style, if a pack of hyenas comes in or something is off track, well, there's a person with a vision who can recreate the order or reinforce the structure. Now, I don't want to police behavior. That's not it. But I do want people to be able to trust that eventually there will be an intervention. It won't be urgent because I assume that no one is in a terribly fragile state unless they're in the terribly fragile state space, in which case the rules might be a little different. So I'm slow to intervene, but eventually someone here will check the crocodile, ram, and antelope patterns just because it's valuable to keep a place optimized for elephant work, which you might consider shadow work. So welcome anybody who wants to visit, maybe become a citizen or establish diplomatic relations. Very glad that you're here, and I hope that interacting with KatherineLand will help you bring your gifts. We need you.